The highlights of the government work report delivered by Chinese Premier Li Cheng at the 14th National People's Congress in Beijing. This year, China aims to expand its economy by around 5%, the same as last year. It shows China is modestly confident in keeping the momentum of its economic growth. The other main targets include creating about 12 million new urban jobs. Premier Li stressed a greater focus on employment, vowing to better leverage fiscal and financial policies to help stabilize it. In terms of consumer spending, Beijing is setting a consumer inflation target of 3% this year. Officials want to boost demand to end a prolonged streak of price drops amid deflationary pressure. And China wants to reduce its energy intensity, or the amount of energy used per unit of economic growth, by 2.5% in 2024. That falls in line with the country's climate targets for its 5-year plan ending in 2025. And for more on all of this, our Sean Calebs is in Beijing. Sean, it's so good to see you. What more can you tell us about the targets set by China for 2024?
Well, I think you're exactly right in hammering away at those bullet points, because that is certainly something that members of two sessions are going to be focused on. They have this blueprint, they have this roadmap to move forward, and they clearly want to focus on modernizing China. You talked about that term that they just talked about, new quality productive forces. So what does that mean? They want to have more innovation. They want to have high innovation. They want to innovate their manufacturing process. They are among the world leaders, obviously, in EVs, renewable energy, and AI. There is going to be money in the budget moving forward for all of those projects. China wants to continue to be the leader. And some of the deputies yesterday, in leaving after the work report was delivered, said, look, China has opportunities, but it also has a drag on the economy. But they believe the good outweighs the bad. And by setting aside money to hammer away at these issues that have been dragging down China's economy, such as unemployment, high unemployment among the young, they believe that they are going to take a very significant step forward. But I think the key moving forward is going to be innovation and modernization. This is a nation that has lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty over the last couple of decades. And so they want to move beyond that now that they've reached this poverty level where they want, and they want to continue to be among the world leaders. But there are going to be challenges, and they were very blunt about that, talking about these drags on the economy. And I want to be very clear about this. I have the work report here in front of me, and I want to read just this one line. It says, quote, "The global economic growth lacks steam, and regional hotspot issues keep erupting. It has made China's external environment more complex, severe, and uncertain. And they believe the foundation for China's sustained economic recovery and growth is not solid enough." And they say that is evidenced by lack of effective demand, overcapacity in some industries. So they're focusing on ways that they can move forward in innovation. They also want to spur on more consumption by the people of China. A lot of lofty goals, and money will be tight this year. And in this report, it was also very blunt, saying there will be no money for so-called vanity projects or wasteful spending. So it's going to be streamlined, high-quality products, innovation, and modernizing China. That is going to be the key moving forward. Karina?
All right, Sean Calebs in Beijing for us. Thank you so much. And joining us now to help discuss China's 2024 growth target and unpack the report is John Quelch, Executive Vice Chancellor at Duke Kunshan University in China, also Yukon Huang, Senior Fellow at the Carnegie Asia Program. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. It's an important discussion to have today. And let me start with you, John. According to this maiden work report delivered by Premier Li, China is looking to repeat what it did last year, expanding GDP by about 5%. In 2023, its GDP surpassed 126 trillion yuan. What's your reaction to the overall report when it comes to the economic policy that was laid out?
Certainly, China is challenged at the moment by several issues that Sean mentioned. Relatively weak consumption, less than expected or hoped for, property market overhangs, municipal debt issues. But overall, we have to look at the long arc of history, and China has delivered to its people double-digit economic growth on average over the last 40 years. And it is one of the greatest economic transformations in human history. So let's put in let's put it all in that context because, yes, there are short-term challenges, and I think that the recommendations that have been put forward regarding boosting unemployment, especially among youth, also an inflation target of 3% to try and elevate consumption. These are measures that will ensure the continued health of the Chinese economy and hopefully help it to rebound from a relatively stodgy 2024.
Yukon, let me bring you into the conversation. The IMF projected China will grow by about 4.6% this year. The World Bank says it will come in at about 4.5%. So how achievable is a 5% GDP target in a slowing overall global economy and structural issues? How does it get there?
There's been a lot of discussion about whether 5% represents a realistic or an ambitious goal. As you mentioned, many forecasters suggest that the more likely outcome is a growth rate somewhere close to 4.5. So how does the 5% represent something ambitious if last year they grew at 5.2%? Well, the comparison is with the previous year, which is a relatively low base. So this year, 2024, 5% is a relatively optimistic or ambitious target because it's built on a much higher base. If you look at the quarter-to-quarter growth numbers for the month-to-month numbers last year, China was actually only growing about 4% on an annual basis. So you're really moving from something like a 4% to a 5%. That's pretty ambitious. But I would say that this is achievable. It represents what I would call a path to a longer-term sustainable growth path. So what China is signaling now is they don't want to have a major stimulus. They really want to build to a new economy, innovation, technology, a new path for urbanization, green technology. These things take time. So there's no point in actually trying to super stimulate the economy. You build the foundation for a longer term growth. And I think 5% is well within that kind of a concept.
And John Lee also stressed ways to improve the unemployment rate, particularly among young Chinese. There's a lot of unrest. The report targets an urban unemployment rate of about 5.5% and wants to create 12 million new urban jobs. How plausible is that? How do we get there?
I think it is. I think it is perfectly plausible. Certainly, there is a sentiment among many young people who've graduated from colleges and universities who are perhaps engaged in delivery driving and other work that does not necessarily leverage their education. You know, there is some concern about the productivity and usefulness of these young people having had a tremendous amount of money invested in their college education. But I think that the focus on AI, the focus on green technology, the focus on issues that are of great interest to and relevance to young people and their education is actually the path forward to try and bring more of these people back into the employment market. So I'm relatively optimistic that this particular element of the proposals will actually be realized.
Yukon, let me change gears a little bit and talk about this dual circulation strategy that China has. How committed are they to that? And can you explain how it works for us?
Well, dual circulation is really a process. It basically says that you can generate growth from external forces. You can generate growth from domestic forces. We realize that the external economy is not expanding very rapidly. Growth last year actually contracted in terms of trade by about 5 to 10%. And we look at U.S. and Europe, it's unlikely that they're going to expand very rapidly. So that means greater priority to looking for sources of domestic growth. And domestic growth can come from both investment and consumption. It's not just stimulating consumption. It's also investment in terms of new urban activities, investment in high-tech services, investment in different parts of the country. So dual circulation basically says if the external sector is not doing very well, rely more on your own domestic efforts. And I think China is actually pushing around and doing a lot of policy that will favor that.
Great insight from both of you, John Quelch and Yukon Huang. Thank you so much for that.